Okay, so we're gonna call the meeting of the Board of Health to order on Wednesday, April 10th. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency cited into law on March 29th, 2023. This meeting will be conducted via remote means and in person, as long as members of the public can easily access the proceedings in real time and participate remotely. Until further notice, this meeting will no longer be broadcast live, but it may be watched when the show is replayed on YouTube. Members of the public who wish to participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner: in person at the Roll Call Meeting Room located second floor, Plymouth Town Hall, 26 Court Street, Plymouth, Mass. Please note that the occupancy limit of the room may reduce the number of attendees that can be accommodated. We just squeezed it in. For remote access, there is a link that's part of the agenda. You may also send any comment or question that pertains to a current agenda item to publichealth@plymouth-ma.gov. They'll be read on the air and answered by the Board of Health as practicable. If time doesn't permit answers during the meeting, responses will be sent by email as soon as possible. Couple of initial things we have to take care of. One is approval of minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes to approve. One is from the 13th of March. Everyone should have received that. Does anyone have changes to the minutes from the 13th of March or corrections? No, no. Amy, any changes? No. Lorenzo, any changes?
He should have.
Shook his head, no. Okay. And I don't think.
Yeah, no changes to the minutes.
That's fine. All the members are here, so I guess Deb doesn't vote on that. So I just need a member of the board to make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
David makes the motion. Is there a second? Dr. Reed seconds the motion. I will call the roll. Lorenzo, yes or no?
Yes.
David, yes or no?
Yes.
Amy? Myself, yes. Minutes from the 13th of March are approved unanimously. The other minutes that we have to look at are from the 27th of March. Again, I did see some things with that, but I don't know if everybody saw the same thing, so I'll first ask other members of the board if they have changes. No? Changes to the 27th of March minutes? Lorenzo, did you notice anything on the 27th of March?
I didn't. Anything material in general. The minutes.
I'm on the
reflect
meeting.
Reduction.
Yeah. Sorry, what do you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, so I did, on the votes, the roll call votes. A lot of them list 4-1, but when you count them up, it's 3-2. And I think some of those votes are actually unanimous in favor. So we need to have the roll call of the votes rechecked to make sure that they're accurate before we can approve them.
We can do it cheap.
Yeah, you have to look at the
Yeah.
taped meeting. Because, I know I voted for some of them, and it was no after my name and no after your name, and all the others were yes. And I'm pretty sure some of them were unanimous. Grease trap variance is our next item of business.
Okay.
Okay, is there someone here to make that presentation for the boys and girls?
Hi, I'm on the call. It's Christine with the Boys and Girls Club of Plymouth.
Okay, please go ahead.
Hi, so yeah, we just had our recent Board of Health inspection for our kitchen. We do have a grease trap, but we don't serve food. We don't use our oven or our even like a fryer. We don't have anything like that. We're not we have an after school program where we're just providing snacks such as like potato chips, fruit, things like that. We do operate a summer camp. However, the food that is brought into us, it's from the Plymouth Public Schools, so it's cold sandwiches, things like that. So we're not preparing any food, we're not cooking any food, nothing like that. We still get our grease trap service every 3 months. And I do have the most recent report from March 18th. From the most recent inspection. so she's aware of it as well, like there's no reason for us to, or like that we were able to, we should be able to get the variance and we paid the fee online already. But they just said I should just join this call and see if I can answer any other questions.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Department's recommendation?
Yeah, so, from the engineering division, Kendra Martin stated that based on no food preparation on site and all food waste being thrown out, she's in support of the variance. Doug Pernard from the sewer department approved without comment, and Doug Hawthorne, our plumbing inspector, his recommendation is they're good with continued use, which is what they just mentioned, which would be continued to have their grease trap serviced on the 3-month plan that they currently have. So based upon all of those comments, the department would recommend approval of the variance.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Board members have questions for this? Amy, no.
No.
Dr. Reed, no. David, no. Lorenzo, do you have anything?
No questions for me. Thank you.
Okay. The only question I have is that obviously if something changes and they start cooking, then they would need to come back to the board so we can
Absolutely.
reevaluate this.
Yep.
So with that condition, would someone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve variance contingent upon continued use and continued 3-month inspections or 3-month emptying of the trap.
And lack of cooking?
No cookies for me.
No cookies?
Yeah, continued use.
Continued use.
Thanks, I was gonna offer cookies. Is there a second? Is there any further discussion? Before I start giving too much. No further discussion, I'll call the roll. Lorenzo, yes or no?
Yes.
David, yes or no?
Yes.
Dr. Reed?
Yes.
Amy? Myself, yes. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Approval is unanimous for your variance.
Thank you so much. Do I need to do any follow-up or are we good to go?
You're good to go.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Okay, next I was asked to recognize our department director. You said before the grease trap, before the.
Yes, please. So I just want to talk, thank you, Dr. Poffin. I just want to talk to the audience, here because our next item, on the agenda is the second generation, scars discussion. And I want to make sure that people understand what it is a discussion. So, Will Fitzgerald will have 15 minutes to speak. Dan Forehand will have 15 minutes to speak. It's not a debate. So we're not going to debate back and forth what William said or what Dan said. This is just a discussion. There'll be no vote taken here today. The board has only the authority to do something for town-owned buildings. So we're not going to discuss restaurants or other privately owned property. Okay, great.
Anything else?
No. Just want to make sure that everyone knew that.
Okay. So I thought I should start off by, so everyone understands, the state law concerning this. And so if you look at the preemption law, it says, and I'm quoting it, the use and application of synthetic toxic chemical herbicides by town employees and or by private contractors for managing lawns, turf, ornamental beds, and trees is prohibited on all town-owned operated lands unless an exemption is granted by the Public Health Department with corroboration by the Board of Health due to an imminent threat to public health. An exemption shall be granted only after all non-toxic interventions have been exercised and fail to produce a tolerable outcome. There is a preemption law, which basically bans town boards and committees from prohibiting the use of these compounds for private sale, although these are not, the ones we're talking about are not currently available for private sale, or for banning their use on private property. I believe we can do something about their use on town-owned properties, which includes, of course, schools, town hall, parks, things of that nature. But we will probably, if we do anything on a subsequent meeting to discuss how the vote should go and take motions, we will have to consult with the town council to make sure we're clear in terms of what we can and cannot do under state law. So, you know, we're bound by state law. If they put one of those in place, there's nothing much we can do about it. I also thought I should mention to you all that there is pending before the House and the Senate in Boston, Bill H.825 and Bill S. 487, which basically concerns the same thing we're here to discuss today. And it's currently been released by the Environmental Committee. It's gone off to Ways and Means. And that happened back on the 7th of September, 2023. Since then, I don't know what's happened to it. Knowing the state, it could be lost somewhere in the rigmarole that they use to go through these things. But it would, I believe, ban second generation anticoagulant rodenticides. And it would probably be a broader thing than we can do as a local one-town board of health.
Is that for all towns?
Well, it's a state law, so yes, it would be a state law unless they decide to make it an option for towns. So, don't know. So I think that the next thing for us to do, and I should point out also that we received a lot of letters about this. 15 were urging the Board of Health to do something to control the use of these compounds in Plymouth, at least on town-owned property, and 1 was opposed to it. So there's 2 names on my list. Obviously, we can't go through 16 names here because we don't have time. But is William Fitzgerald present?
Yes, sir.
Would you like to make a presentation or?
Absolutely. We do have a presentation that was sent to the board a few days in advance. I do have a statement as well, but I think the presentation provides some really helpful context. Just everyone can hear me and see me. Is that right? We all good?
Is that good on the owl device?
You probably find
It's
it.
good.
Okay, cool. So first of all, thank you so much for having me here to speak today. I really appreciate the invitation. And we're just really excited to speak with you today. So Rescue Plymouth Wildlife is a community advocacy organization. Our priority is to raise awareness about how SCARs and other rat poisons endanger wildlife, pets, and people in Plymouth. We support responsible pet management. However, we view pest management strategies that rely on chemicals that have no verified benefits to public health and well-documented costs to wildlife, pets, and people as irresponsible, especially when plentiful alternatives exist. So you can see right here, this is a pyramid that talks about integrated pest management. And as defined by the EPA, integrated pest management allows for limited use of rodenticides and other toxins in the event of emergencies, but only after alternatives have been exhausted. So you can see we have that red pyramid, right, that red point right at the top, when you can have chemical agents to take care of the problem. But before that, that exigency is exercised, there is responsibility to examine all other opportunities for handling an issue in a poison-free manner. Next slide, please. So we urge the Board of Health to use its regulatory authority to restrict or eliminate the use of second-generation anticoagulant rodenticides on public property in Plymouth, like many towns and cities in the Commonwealth have already done. SCARs are highly toxic class of chemicals that pest management professionals and homeowners use to target rats and other rodents. They prevent and expose animals' blood from clotting. Although a rodent can consume a lethal dose in one night of feeding, it typically takes 5 to 7 days to expire. During this time, it can walk around in an impaired state and become food for one of the many species of wildlife in Plymouth that use rodents as the foundation of their diet, such as owls, hawks, coyotes, bobcats, fishers, foxes, and others. If you go to the next slide, please. This illustrates certain toxic food what I've done talked about. So even when the baits are set out in the bait box, there's no way to exclude or prevent unintended exposure, unintended consequences. So since predators individually consume hundreds or thousands of rodents annually, lethal levels of SCARs can accumulate in their tissues. Even animals that supplement their diets with rodents, like bald eagles, are vulnerable. Tufts University provides the best data set that we have regarding the ubiquity of these toxins in our local ecosystems. In 2020, they reported 100% of red-tailed hawks treated at Tufts Wildlife Clinic from 2017 to 2018 had eschars in their tissues. Next slide, please. A 2021 study from the University of Georgia found that 82% of bald eagles tested from locations across the country also had these chemicals in their tissues. Moreover, Mass Wildlife has confirmed eschars have killed several bald eagles in Massachusetts since 2021. And that's just wildlife. The EPA banned the sale of these poisons to consumers in 2015 after poison centers across the United States received tens of thousands of accidental poisoning reports annually during the 1990s and 2000s. Over 90% of the victims in those cases were children under the age of 3. Next slide, please. MSPCA Angel in Boston estimates that they receive at least one case of pet exposure to these chemicals weekly. On top of all this, even though eschars have been around since the 1970s, no data or peer-reviewed study shows that eschars and other insecticides, for that matter, have a meaningful impact on rodent populations where they're applied. By extension, no data supports the claim that these poisons protect public health better than poison-free methods, many of which exist. Indeed, existing data refutes these claims. In 2022, New York City officials authorized the application of 37 tons of rodenticides on public property in the city. As a result, rodent complaints doubled during the same year to over 60,000. Boston does not publish its use levels, but eschars and other rodenticides are included in their tactical toolkit and have not stopped the 400% increase in rodent complaints the city has experienced since 2011. Cities and towns across the Commonwealth have already recognized that eschars and other rodenticides are a net negative to public health. Next slide, please. Newton, Cambridge, Somerville, Newbury, and Arlington have already experimented with poison-free approaches, leading some to approve bans on these poisons for use on public and private property. We urge the Board of Health to do the same. Our town deserves better pest management strategies than the ones that rely on highly toxic chemicals with no verifiable benefits to public health and well-documented costs to the health of wildlife, pets, and people. Thank you.
Thank you. The other name on the list is Dan Foran. Dan?
Dan Foran, I did talk to Board of Health about possibly having a couple other people come with me as part of that.
Yeah, you have 15 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you want to split it up, that's absolutely
Yeah,
fine.
if I can invite Mike up and Rich up. So I sent most of this to you guys in the email. Do you have the video that I sent you guys? That was recorded here in Plymouth in 2023. So I'll just go over the video real quick. So this was recorded in South Plymouth in 2023. I've never seen a video like that in Plymouth until it was sent to me. Property has since been treated for rats, and no, we don't have a problem. So it's close to 3 dozen rats that come pouring out of this dumpster while they're picking it up. So my name is Dan Foriand. I'm a lifelong resident in the town of Plymouth for the last 34 years. I have a bachelor's degree from UMass Amherst in natural resource management and a minor in wildlife and fisheries conservation. I have completed 95% of my master's degree from the University of Colorado in natural resource management. I participate annually for the last decade volunteering for Mass Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, involved in the bald eagle nest surveys and population counts here in Plymouth and Carver. My passion is wildlife and conservation. Outside of work, I have personally contributed countless dollars, time, and energy to habitat conservation and wildlife conservation in our town of Plymouth. I'm also the owner of a pest and wildlife control company based here in Plymouth. I undergo extensive licensing and continuing education requirements through the state in order to be able to perform my duties. I have seen firsthand the increased volume of rats and rodents here in town dating back to 2020. Plymouth's rat population continues to grow and expand alongside our overdevelopment of natural habitat. I use rodenticide, both eschars and FGARs, in a limited as needed capacity per my integrated pest management plan. I can best describe this product as an important tool in our pest management toolbox that, when used responsibly and by licensed trained professionals, is essential to the management of rodents, and secondary issues are significantly reduced. It is important to note that rodenticide, specifically eschars, has been on the market for more than 5 decades. This is not a new product. Rodenticide belongs solely in the hands of licensed trained professionals and should not be sold over the counter to the general public. Despite what you had mentioned about it not being available for sale to the general public, escars are actually. Many people go on Amazon, they go on Walmart, and they buy the product in that fashion. Plymouth and our state as a whole, wildlife populations, both predatory birds and mammals, continue to remain stable, whereas in our bald eagle population continues to grow and expand unabated through the multiple decades of use of specifically escars. It is important to note that the alternatives to rodenticide are inefficient, cost prohibitive to low-income residents, and come with their own downfalls. We use an integrated pest management plan at our company where we use rodenticide sparingly and on an as-needed basis. As pest management professionals, we really are on the front lines of public health, whether it's in our town's restaurants, our town's schools, or even our residents' homes. Altering our ability to use this product will significantly hamper our ability to meet the requirements of public health. I would ask the Board of Health to remember Plymouth South Elementary School, treated by a different company from 2023 or late 2022, where a rat infestation became statewide news and even made it on to Fox National News. This is what happens when an integrated pest management plan is not properly instituted. Alongside this negative publicity that the town received, the taxpayer incurred an emergency bill of $9,600 for the one school, which is more than half of the entire 12-month contract for all of town-owned buildings. There is no financial stake in this discussion for myself or my company. The consumer will incur increased cost and a decrease in effectiveness if we are not allowed to use our full set of tools. I also wanted to make note that the proposal does not intend to stop at public property. He intends to push it all the way through to private property. Lastly, please note that for the last 4 years, Plymouth's own health department, data received at my request to them, has received an increasing number of rodent complaints each year, and 2024 is on tap to be another record year for complaints to their office. And then I just mentioned the video, and then just want to introduce Mike, who also wants to.
My name is Mike Medeiros. I'm a licensed and certified pest management professional. I've been providing pest control services in Plymouth and the surrounding towns for the past 26 years. Myself and other members in the industry service numerous properties in this town: homes, rental properties, hospitals, senior centers, restaurants, grocery stores, and hotels. We're committed to providing a quality pest management service that protects health, food, and property. As a pest management professional, we use integrated pest management strategies, as we were discussing when treating for pests and rodents. We thoroughly inspect the property, provide exclusion and rodent proofing suggestions, and educate our customers on what they can do to make their properties less desirable and suitable for rodents to thrive. Exclusion and rodent proofing is a recommended and often necessary component of many rodent control programs, but it's not a fail-safe. Rodents do not need much access to gain into a structure. A mouse only needs a 1/4 inch, a rat needs a 1/2 inch open. So even with the most extensive and thorough exclusion efforts, complete success is often not achieved. Furthermore, a large percentage of homeowners and businesses simply can't afford the cost associated with that type of treatment. When rodent populations need to be handled properly, we prudently use escars. We secure them in tamper-resistant bait stations and position them in a manner where consumers and non-target animals will not come into contact with rodenticide. Escars are an essential tool because they provide the most effective and affordable methods of rodent control. If escars are not available to professionals in our industry, we would have no choice but to use significantly less effective methods that would include the use of glue traps and snap traps. These traps are only capable of capturing one rodent at a time, and once captured, the trap needs to be replaced before being able to catch another rodent. This will require increased visits to the site, costing the consumer more money for a less effective treatment plan, which in turn creates a larger burden for lower-income households. These traps are not discriminatory. When we put them out, they're capable of capturing non-target animals around the property also. Rats and mice become trap shy also. These rodents will remember a near miss or an injury. If a snap trap misses them, a glue board, they'll never go to it again, deeming those traps ineffective. Then the use of first generation rodenticides or non-anticoagulant rodenticides are not nearly as effective in controlling rodents and potentially pose even greater risk to children and non-target animals, especially dogs, cats. First generation rodenticides have a limited efficacy. Rodents have a low susceptibility to the active ingredient first generations. The rodenticides including warfarin, difacinone, which is why second gens were developed in the first place. Adequate control was not being achieved with those products. Consumers and professionals using F-gars would have to use more rodenticide and make more bait placements to gain control in comparison to S-gars with greater efficacy. As a result, the amount of bait being used and the duration of potential exposure will be greater to children and domestic animals. Non-anticoagulant baits such as bromethalin, zinc phosphide are acute rodenticides that can kill a rodent in a single feeding. These fast-acting rodenticides often lead to bait shyness of sublethally poisoned rats. They'll learn to avoid these baits, and the same can be said for cholecalciferol, which is vitamin D3. The non-anticoagulant rodenticides do not have a specific antidote, they're fast-acting, so there's no delayed effects, which produces a greater risk to children and pets. And on the other hand, SCARs do have a specific antidote, they have vitamin K1. The SCARs have a delayed effect before the onset of symptoms, allowing for timely treatment if consumed by non-target animals. Just a couple of weeks ago in the Boston area, 2 dogs accidentally consumed bromethalin, apparently put out by homeowners. Both dogs sadly had to be put down. My initial thought was if they had gotten into an SCAR instead of a non-anticoagulant rodenticide, they likely could have been treated with vitamin K1 and survived. And to think these non-anticoagulant baits are being sold in retail stores and purchased by homeowners that have no knowledge or training in the proper use of these products. Rodent control is not like it was when I started in this industry 25 years ago. We mostly received calls for rodents in colder months, and rats were mostly a bigger issue in the cities. Nowadays, rodents are a year-round problem. We receive more calls for rodent issues than we do for any other pest issue, especially rats. Rats can now be found in every community in New England. Rodents are a major public health issue. They are carriers of many disease-causing pathogens that can be transmitted to people and pets, including hantavirus, leptospirosis, rat bite fever, and plague. In fact, just last month, a man died in New Mexico from bubonic plague. It was all over the news. Bubonic plague is spread to humans by rodents through the bite of an infected flea. And because of the rise in leptospirosis in humans and pets, Tufts University is now conducting a rat survey in Boston. We can't allow our community to be overtaken by rats. We can't leave our elderly, our children, our pets subjected to these horrific diseases. We can't allow our grocery stores, restaurants, hospitals, schools, and neighborhoods to be destroyed by the spread of disease and damage caused by rodents, which will be inevitable if we take SCARs away from the professionals. The use of SCARs by pest management professionals is undoubtedly the most effective and affordable method of rodent control. So I fear that if we discontinue the use of SCARs on a professional level, we will see an increasing spread of disease and damage at an alarming rate, and the public will take it upon themselves at some point and use any measure possible to eliminate these disease-carrying rodents from their homes and businesses, even if it means getting their hands on SCARs and other types of rodenticides and then using them in an unknowingly irresponsible manner. It is of utmost importance that these highly effective, affordable rodenticides be made available to licensed pest management professionals. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Richard?
Well, my name is Richard Berman. I'm an industry consultant, and I'm also a member of the Massachusetts Pesticide Board. The board sets pesticide public policy. We register the pesticides. If the benefits exceed the hazard and the risk, we advise the department and create pesticide public policy. The subject that you're dealing with, EPA has recognized that it's a significant national concern. So right now, EPA has come out with draft changes of registration status. In Massachusetts, is waiting to see what's going to happen. Probably going to happen before the end of 2024. This has been going on for a number of years now. And what we anticipate is these products will be taken away from the consumer market so that only licensed, trained, certified applicators will be able to have them and use them. So if you have any questions at some point, I'll leave my contact information. I'm not here representing the pesticide board, but I can answer questions on how the pesticide program works and how these products are registered. And we have the authority to not register something if they create hazards. And I talked to the department director yesterday in advance of coming here, and they are not having a rash of complaints and problems with animals dying and exposure. So leave it at that. If you have any questions.
Thank you. Thanks. So we've heard from 3 people. You have something else to say?
Yeah, he's got 3 minutes.
Just wanted to mention that, all about having a reasonable conversation, reasonable opinions. My business has been, because of my opinions that I shared with you tonight, has been subject of 17 negative reviews on Facebook, complaints to my licensing, both with Mass Department of Agricultural Resources, as well as with the Mass Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, my problem animal control license. shared my opinion, shared where I stand. All of those complaints were unfounded, but just wanted to let you know the type of direction the conversation is heading. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the audience who has a alternative view along with the first speaker? So we can make a balanced presentation. Yes, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to firstly introduce myself. My name is Aaron Keaton. I work with the Community Land and Water Coalition. So we're a grassroots group that works to conserve and protect our local ecosystem as well as our sole source aquifer. And I guess our biggest concern is just the way that these compounds.
Can you face this way?
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
can pick you up.
Just our biggest concern is that, these chemicals firstly bioaccumulate and kind of spread across the environment through other animals eating, rats, for example, that have ingested these compounds. And so not only do they spread across the environment to other organisms, they continue to stay in the environment. These compounds don't just disappear. Bioaccumulation is basically small amounts of this compound continuously being found. So, not only is it affecting the wildlife, if these compounds are getting into our environment, they do have the potential to reach our waterways, freshwater fish, and our drinking water. So I really commend the work that Will and his group is doing. And again, I just wanted to share that the Community Land and Water Coalition, sent in a letter of support, and we're really glad that these conversations are happening. Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wish to speak?
Some of our land, Rebecca.
Oh, Rebecca? Is that Becca?
Hi, yeah,
Hi.
thank you so much, appreciate it. So I'm Rebecca Dimitrick from California, Humane Wildlife Control. We are leaders in poison-free rodent control, and I'd like to first offer a couple quotes by rodentologist Robert Corrigan, who's one of the world's leading experts in rodent control. And these are from his book entitled Rodent Control, A Practical Guide for Pest Management Professionals. Rodent proofing in conjunction with sanitation efforts provides the best long-term management of rodent infestations. Next quote, unfortunately, many property owners and pest management professionals bypass even the simplest rodent proofing situations and default to repetitive trapping and poison baiting programs as their primary choice. End quote. Rodent proofing, also called exclusion, is widely accepted as the best choice for managing rodents and thereby protecting health and public safety. It is the fail-safe. Rodent proofing is a one and done solution producing lasting results, so you don't need poison or any other lethal control measures. So prioritizing the use of rodenticides, which is so frustrating to hear, not only contradicts the IPM, integrated pest management paradigm, as you've heard, but it's also counterproductive. It's counterproductive. It's simply, the poison is simply food, and it actually attracts animals, rats, to a property. And like all lethal control measures, where there's nothing done to address the actual source of the problem, the catalyst, then you're having more rodents replace the ones that are killed. 1 minus 1 equals 1. And that's just what the pest control companies, the operators you've heard from today, want. They want that guarantee of repeat business. They don't want to fix the problem because they fear, unfortunately, that they won't be able to survive. But they can if they offer these other solutions, rodent proofing and exclusion. So really pushing that, as you've heard, that agenda, it's devious, it's unscrupulous, an unscrupulous tactic, and in this case, wasteful of taxpayer dollars. And I hope that you can see through this deceptive agenda. I'm shocked at the inaccuracies of the speakers I've heard. Mice cannot get through a quarter inch. I'm sorry, mice cannot get through a quarter inch, and the video showing the rats, no poison is going to control that. I'm done. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, nice. Okay.
Okay. You were just stopping the
Yeah.
presentation.
Stopping there. Yep.
Is there anybody else that wishes to speak?
Again, I want to remind people before they speak, this is not a debate. So if we fall into a debate mode, because that's not what this is for, a debate would have to be done in a public forum. This is not a public forum. This is a Board of Health meeting. If someone starts speaking in more of a debate forum, we will advise them to stop going down that path, because that's not appropriate in this setting.
Okay, thank you, please.
So, my name's Heather Packard. I'm community organizer with Mass Audubon. And Mass Audubon has a program, one of our advocacy programs called Rescue Raptors that I'm helping manage. And so I'm supporting Will and the Rescue Plymouth Wildlife Group in any way I can. And we really, I'm gonna keep it short. It's time to go, but I feel like everything that Will had said is very accurate. There is a broad, integrated pest management is a whole different set of techniques, and too often the pest control companies are going straight to the escort and skipping the others, putting out plate boxes where there isn't really even a hardcore rodent problem. Other towns and cities have not, who've actually prohibited it, have not had Ratmageddon occur, the whole state of California, British Columbia. So if you effectively use all the other strategies to exclude, start, and target when necessary, use those other strategies that works. We have 21 nature centers across the state, including ones with commercial kitchens, livestock feed, and livestock. We use no escars on any of our properties, and we do not have problems with rodents because we really practice all those other techniques. So I'm just here to support that.
So, thank you. And Donna, did you want to speak?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I'm Donna Ferrand. I just wanted to remind everybody that the growth of the eagles has been tremendous since 2012. And I think in Massachusetts, we have to remember that if this is a particular problem, then why is the growth of the eagle population expanding beyond what anybody would ever think? So I just want to remind everybody that this is important, although we need accurate information, and that comes from the Massachusetts Wildlife website, and you can go on there and read that yourself. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for speaking.
One other point of order, Dr. Poppin, if I can. Folks, you cannot chat back and forth in the chat. It's a violation of open meeting law. So for those of us who are coming remotely, please refrain from putting anything in the chat back and forth to each other, or this whole meeting will be in violation of open meeting law. We don't want that to happen.
Love to adjourn the meeting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Are we allowed to ask questions or anything?
You, as far as I know, you can ask questions. I want to ask questions too. So.
It's in town. Is it downtown? And that seems like the obvious.
Well, I think our department director is gonna, pretty well explain that.
So what has happened in the town of Plymouth, it started 2 years ago, really, and what happened was, no one wanted coyotes anymore. So, the coyote population diminished greatly. Well, when a food chain goes out of whack and the coyote population diminished, the 5 small mammals, rats, mice, rabbits, chipmunks, and squirrels increase. It's like any other food chain when it's out of whack. So now we have 5 small mammals where people have never seen 5 small mammals before. People are reporting they've never seen rabbits in their yard before, and now their yards are covered in rabbits. People have never seen rats in the neighborhood before. Where it was in the past, most likely isolated to the waterfront rats. You're always gonna see rats in the water, and probably near restaurants because of just the food source. Now we're seeing them everywhere. So when folks call our department and say, what can we do? We look at what can they do individually. Don't have bird feeders. If you have a bird feeder in your backyard, you might as well put a sign out that says, come on over, I have a rat buffet. If you have a domestic animal, don't feed it outside. Same idea. A rat or a small rodent does not distinguish between that belongs to Fluffy or that belongs to me. So if you encourage them to come to your home and they find food there, they'll stay there. So we really start with the individual. What can we do to protect our homes from rodents? And we are seeing a huge number of increase in complaints, and it's everywhere. So I don't want anyone to think that it's just in their neighborhood, because I can tell you right now, it's not. It's all over the entire town. So again, what can you do? Make sure you take all your food in from outside, feed on your animals inside. Make sure you don't have any bird feeders. Make sure your trash is put in containers that are rodent proof. That's a big plus, because again, you wanna make it as unattractive as you possibly can, so they don't stay on your property. Another thing is, and I did notice that in a lot of, the materials that we received, when they talk about exclusion, is repairing things. If you have holes in your foundation, because it's warm in your house, or it's cool in your house in the summer, if you have holes in your foundation, fix them. If you have holes in the walls of your house or your garage, fix them. Because if it's warm in the winter, they're gonna come in because they're gonna find warmth. If it's cold, if they're cold, they're gonna find warmth, and if they're hot, they're gonna find cool. So these are all things that an individual homeowner can do in order to try.
In the website that you guys have up for Plymouth is awesome. Like if you go on the public health website, all of the things you list are great. I would definitely direct
Thank
people
you.
to that. Yeah, it's impressive.
Thank you. Because we know, let's face it, it's ugly. No one wants to open up their back door and see rats running around, or like the video that Dan shared with us. I mean, that's disturbing. But we also have to think about what are the best ways for us to do that. And I always say it starts with yourself, doesn't it? Right? COVID started with self-care. Rodent control is gonna start at home, literally yours.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
Yep.
Anyone else? Yes, please.
Hi, I usually just want to live an experience. I grew up on a brook and
Can you identify yourself for the record?
I'm Liz Tracy. So I grew up on a brook and all our lives we've always had rats. If they were down in the brook, we're used to them. What we have is Haverhart traps. Constantly just put the Haverhart traps on. We have several of them. So every morning, what do you got? You got rats. Then I decided to put a bird feeder out, and what made me want to speak. So I put a bird feeder out in our front yard. Loved it, birds are everywhere. And we had this little rat that came up, found his way up to the bird feeder, called him Stubbs, he had a short tail. Went on for like a week. Haven't noticed the same one. I even have him on video. I love him. So, but I didn't want him up near my dogs, so I had to remove the feeder. You know what happened? He went away. Didn't see him again.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so I'm gonna ask board members if they have questions for anybody. I have a few because I did my research. I am, after all, biologist and research scientist by training, so. Amy, anything?
I do have a question for the pest control. What is your technique when you, like, if somebody calls you for your house, to come to your house, can you tell us when you would actually use the roadside?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Karen mentioned, one of our biggest approaches when we go to a property is, why do they have rodents? Why do they have rats? Everything she listed is first and foremost on our investigation of the property. Why do they have rats? Do they live near people that have livestock, chickens? Do they have a trash issue? Is the trash unsecured? Tending, some of those calls when they arrive, do they live near water? Hey, I think I've got something going on in the house. There's chew marks in the barn, the garage, whatever the case may be. If it's near water, they're probably a little bit more prone to have rats than people that live away from the water. That used to be the case until the last couple of years, and then now it's a town-wide issue. But the first step of that is the exclusion. We're looking for how they're getting in. We're getting it closed up. We do rely on snap traps. We do rely on glue traps. Rodenticide is used as part of that management plan. It's an effective tool that gets the population down, knocked down quick, especially inside somebody's house where they're dealing with mice, rats. It eliminates them quickly. And then we transition to a maintenance program where it's more the traps, more improvements. Every time we go out, whether it's a quarterly basis, or whether it's a monthly basis, that's one of our things. We're looking at, are there any new points of entry? Does the customer, as she alluded to, does the customer have a construction issue, a maintenance issue on the house? Did something pop up in the time that we were there since last? So that's kind of how we approach it.
Thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Before you walk away, I have a question for you as well. It kind of tags on with hers. So what percentage of the time would you say you wind up using the scars?
It's probably 60% of the time, maybe more. It all depends. Each individual situation is completely different. To me, it's more about prolonged use. There's really no need for prolonged use. It's that initial use. For instance, I referred to Plymouth South Elementary School. That was overrun, completely overrun with rats. They actually weren't going into that school except every 3 months. All the professionals here would tell you 3 months inside a school, a lot can happen in that 3 months. It should never have gotten to that point, which goes back to the integrated pest management plan where routine, regular visits. Board of Health, as you know, requires restaurants to have a pest management plan. Some towns say they can set that to whatever they want to set it to. Our town, our industry experts, we set that to a monthly. We're coming into those restaurants once a month. We're doing everything that I just mentioned and then some, again, to keep the rodents and rats out of places where customers come in and serve food. Yes.
Don't go too far, because I'm sure there'll be other questions. Right.
So Mr. Friend, if we had, used alternative, you mentioned that there was a bill, something to the effect of $9,700, when Plymouth South had their rat infestation. If we use alternative methods, could you ballpark what it would cost taxpayers to remedy that problem?
If the town chose to ban on public property, you'd be looking at a 30% plus increase, roughly in cost to the taxpayer, to the town. The private property direction, whether or not low income families can support that kind of a bill. And would remain to be seen. I know the taxpayer could save that $9,600 if there was a monthly inspection at that particular location.
Thank you. I have some questions for Mr. Fitzgerald, if that's all right. Mr. Fitzgerald, Mr. Ferrand said that your group doesn't intend to end at public property. Can you address that?
Yeah, what we want to do is we want to work with the town to develop a more sustainable solution. And since SCARs are used on both public property and private property, the limitation to the public property is a good start. However, what we've seen is that access to these poisons will allow the costs to wildlife, pets, and children to persist. So yes, we will continue to work with the town, regardless of what is decided in the short term and the long term. The key thing is figuring out the right solution for Plymouth. It's one thing for Newbury, which is a town of 6,000 people, to ban SCAR youth on private and public property. It's another thing for Plymouth, which is a town of 60,000 to do the same. That would be ideal. However, we want to work with the town directly to provide a sustainable solution that's right for Plymouth. And even in the case of a ban, even California's ban, which banned second generation anticoagulant rodenticides outright, they provide a specific exemption in cases for public health emergencies. However, using these poisons as a first strike on rodent populations is irresponsible.
Thank you. And I'm gonna ask the Land and Water Coalition a question too, so get yourself ready. I've seen some of the signs that folks have brought. I've seen those elsewhere in town as well. And in part of your presentation, you spoke about birds of prey in other communities that have succumbed to a secondary poisoning from these chemicals. Is there any data about Plymouth specifically in terms of how many birds of prey have succumbed to secondary poisoning?
Yeah, there have been 8 examples in the past 3 years.
Okay, 8 in 3 years.
The issue with that is most wildlife rehabilitation centers can't afford the definitive diagnosis. First of all, a definitive diagnosis requires a liver test that requires a dead animal. And also another thing that we're dealing with is the presence of avian flu. So for example, Mass Wildlife has carcasses of bald eagles or other birds that they want to test. If the carcass tests positive for avian flu, they have to destroy the carcass right away. So that's the data we have.
Are those, I'm sorry, are those highly suspected cases or those confirmed cases? Very different, very, very different.
So they can't be confirmed without any prostate.
That's correct. So those 8 that you mentioned then are suspected, not confirmed. I think that's important that you share that information.
Okay.
Thank you. Have there been any other animals, any other predators in town that have succumbed to secondary poisoning?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, I think that's all I have for you, but would you mind coming up?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't remember your name.
Aaron.
Aaron, thank you. So you mentioned, during your statements that, these chemicals could find their way into the water,
Yeah.
system. Has there been any testing of our water to find these chemicals?
I'm not aware.
Okay.
That's something I would definitely look into. But off the bat, I would say probably not. Who knows, but.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I have a follow-up.
I'm fine. Okay.
To David. It's David, right?
It is, yes.
Okay, I actually have heard that there are some vets in town that have received animals that had some kind of poison, like pets. Do any of you guys have data on what that was like?
We do.
Those vets?
We do. So, since 2011, there have been 11 cases, again, highly suspected, pets poisoning, universally dog. So as long as these, even if they're put out by a licensed pest management professional, there is the potential for secondary exposure to pets. So that's the data that we have though from Portuguese Animal Hospital.
So I think it's important to note as well that those 11 were between 2009 and 2022.
That's correct.
So we're talking 13 years, there are 11.
That's true, but however, although there is an antidote, we're talking about costs. You know, the cost for a vet bill for even, you know, a non-lethal poisoning for dogs can run to be over $2,000. Like, yes, vitamin K is effective, but a vitamin K regimen needs to be in place for at least 6 weeks to get blood clotting back to the normal level. So, you know, it's one thing if, you know, you're saving money by putting the poisons out, but then that cost then gets pushed on to rehabbers who are taking care of these animals, and to vets and to families with poison pets. So there are costs to everything, but we just need to make sure that we're apportioning the costs correctly for the most sustainable and the solution that's best for public health. Thank you.
Just a minute. We've spoken a lot, so. Okay,
I can.
go ahead.
Just curious, heard children mentioned quite a bit by, the other side. Is there any data related to children?
0.
Under 6, I think.
Yep,
Under 6 children or?
Under
age-
6
Under 6
age.
under 6, yeah, but we have no data to show that anyone has been affected by it.
Yes.
Quick question, Charlie Bletzer, precinct 5. I live on Carver Road and I did have a couple of rats on my property. And I called pest control and they were able to trap, and I do have a bird feeder, cat. And my pest control guy told me that was a problem. But they were able to trap them and then they took them out. But my question is, I'm a homeowner, but the commercial restaurants, for instance, in the waterfront businesses that have this issue, they don't have bird feeders. And so what recommendations do you have for preventive measures short of rodent pesticides?
Well, there are a few things, but we have to be honest with ourselves. Any place that has the majority of food, like our restaurants do, are going to be attracted to all kinds of pests, not just rodents. So what we can do, everywhere we can do, both residential and commercial, is to control the amount of trash that's put outside and make sure it's in proper receptacles. If they.
Closed dumpsters.
Absolutely, and if they find that they're reaching, and I tell this to restaurants, you know, food restaurants that we've come across, they may need to up how many times it's picked up. You know, the once a week times maybe in the past here in Plymouth, we may have to really start taking a look at that. Trash needs to be picked up more often than that. And I think that would really help a great deal toward any situation with restaurants.
So I think, and there's probably businesses here that could confirm that they do this. And
Yeah,
they just
absolutely.
do Power wash, keep the place clean.
And we have a pest, and someone mentioned too, that every food establishment in Plymouth has to have a pest control plan, a contract with a licensed pest control company that we keep on record here in the public health office, to make sure that everyone has that pest control plan. And the other thing that we do as well, and someone did mention it, but I think it's exceptionally important that we talk about it, is every building that's torn down in the town of Plymouth must have a pest control plan for that demolition. So we're trying to really stop things from becoming a problem.
So I think, just my opinion, that before we change the plan, we need to have a very good plan that's gonna replace it. Or we could have a, get it.
Mr. Blitzer, absolutely. And what we're doing here today really is like the fact-finding
I
mission.
appreciate what you.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. Well,
This is,
if the board was to change anything, like I mentioned before, there'd have to be a public forum, it would have to be advertised. We would have to allow for lots of debate, because that's what a public forum is for. But tonight is really just a fact-finding mission.
Right, and I know both sides believe that they have valid points.
Absolutely.
So it's up-
Yeah, I have to let the other Board of Health members speak first, if you don't mind. Lorenzo, do you have questions?
I do not have any questions for the presenters.
Okay, Deb, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Okay. I just wanted to, some of it's factual, and some of it's a question. I mean, obviously, the problem that we're having is that, these SCARs don't really break down, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, for approximately 14 days. Whereas the FCARs last about 7 days. So one of the things that popped into my mind was, well, if that's the case, then we've got rodents that are probably sick or already have died, that are out there and are likely to be picked up by any kind of an owl, eagle, coyote, because it's food. So I was wondering, does anyone know if there's any kind of rodenticide that's being developed that has a shorter half-life that might break down more quickly? I didn't think so, but I thought I'd ask.
Dr. Reed does.
Oh, you do?
This one actually, it's called Terra Blocks, Terra D.
That's cholecalciferol, which is vitamin D3.
Right,
And that's very toxic to dogs, domestic animals. There's no antidote, so, it has very low toxicity to birds. But on the other hand, as I was saying before, there's, if a domestic animal gets into that, or a child, the outcome's not good.
Oh, that's not good. Okay.
So the outcome isn't good if they get into SCARs either. And that is what we've used at Mass Audubon sanctuaries when we had an actual rodent infestation. Because we have sanctuaries in like downtown Worcester. And I know last summer they had one, and they had, we acknowledge, like, exclude if you're birds, then you try and starve them. But eventually you have to target them, and we tried snap traps and different things, but sometimes when you have an actual infestation, especially in an urban setting like Worcester, or we have the nature center down, in the city, that you have to do something. But they only put it was a pest control company who uses it as a professional. They put them where, no one can get to them. They're in the same box, basically, that's tamper resistant. And they were only there for a month, and there was no rats anymore. And it didn't poison all over, right?
So I have another question that sort of relates to that. When you utilize these bait boxes, you put them in place, I suppose, somewhere, different locations around the business or the home. How long do you wait before you return to the site to see if there are animals that are died either on the property, or if they're looking sick that are on the property?
So at the beginning of the program, we're out there a lot more frequently. As I mentioned, we switched from the SCARs to more of a maintenance program, which transitions to a month-to-month. But prior to that, we're out there, if not weekly, we're out there every other week, in the beginning. You had mentioned just real quick on alternatives, kind of direction you were asking. There's also a product out there. It's best way to describe it is it's a CO2 powered trap where the rodent can stick its head up inside of the trap, and piston eliminates the rodent up inside the trap. So as far as my company is concerned, what we've done to try to limit the use of SCARs is this trap was, up until 2 weeks ago, was not allowed to be used in the state of Massachusetts. There was some states out west of Boston, towns and boards of health that were using it on town-owned property illegally at that point. But Mass Division Fisheries and Wildlife, through my pressure and my questioning and my pushing, has enabled that to be used as an alternative to snap traps. So they're describing it as a modern rat trap. So we've certainly made efforts to look into the other ideas that you're talking about.
Another idea that's come up in Somerville. Apparently they use some kind of electric smart box. So I assume the rat goes into that, makes contact with two metal pads and basically gets electrocuted.
Right.
Are those legal in Massachusetts?
They are.
Yeah.
And as you heard from Mass Audubon, all of these things are tools in the toolbox essentially. And as she mentioned, at some point in certain areas, you do need to use a product. And that's what we do as a company, what we have to
Okay.
use it.
And in Boston, I read that they use a carbon monoxide smoke out machine.
Yes. We also use that as well.
You do use that?
Yep, so in the areas where there's a lot of burrows, it's a tool in the toolbox again, where you have to have a concentration of burrows. A lot of times at these customers' homes, neighbor, 3, 4, 5 doors down will have chickens, will have horses, will have traps unsecured, will have a dilapidated home. 3, 4, 5 houses down are dealing with the rats that are looking for additional food source. So the burrows are over that particular property that's not being addressed. And the other consumer who's doing a proactive approach, hey, everything's secure, I don't have animals. I called the Board of Health and asked what I can do, and I've met all their requirements. They're dealing with the overflow of rats from these other particular issues.
Yeah, I mean, where I live in Plymouth, we don't have much of a rat problem, but there's a lot of construction going on. And that seems to cause some issues. We do see mice. And one of the things I noticed, somebody sent us pictures of big piles of leaves and debris up against the corners of buildings. That's a nesting area for sure.
Yep, absolutely.
And so, people need to remove that stuff as well. And the other thing, obviously, in some cities, they just put trash out in bags, plastic bags, which is basically the dinner bell going off. Because they can easily tear their ways through those things. Where I live, all the trash is kept within garages in sealed plastic containers with covers. But what bothers me is people put it out the night before, rather than, putting it out in the morning, so it's just not exposed as long to potentially being sources of food for the rodents. We have had voles, which I thought of because you mentioned that you saw what you thought was a rat with a very short tail.
Oh, no, it was definitely a rat.
Okay.
100%.
Because voles look like either big mice or little rats with very short tails. And the thing that bothered me, because I talked to residents that live around where we are. First of all, I keep telling everybody, don't put out bird feeders. And, as soon as people stopped putting them out, we had less problem with various rodents like mice and voles. But, obviously, there's other things that you can do, short of actually using these rodenticides, as an initial sort of thing. When people were having trouble with the voles, first thing I saw was a whole bunch of pesticide company trucks up and down the street. And I looked to see what was going on, and they were putting out bait boxes. So then I went to the neighbors and I said, okay, what did they recommend? Is that the first step, or is something else that they recommended you do before you go to that? And everybody said it was the first thing they did. So I don't think that's, well, maybe you have an opinion about that, or maybe you have an opinion about that. But that seems to be not the proper way to go unless there's a massive infestation. Go ahead.
I just was gonna point out, it's common to refer to these stations as bait stations. That doesn't necessarily mean there's any bait in them. They can be used to house a trap, as you can imagine, a trap that you don't want the general public to see a dead rat. That trap can be contained inside those boxes, so certainly they do contain bait. They're used for bait very frequently, but also just note that they can be used for concealing traps, concealing a dead rodent. The trap that I mentioned to you before, the CO2 driven device, they've actually come out, because one of the concerns with that is if you stick it out in a dumpster area, you have a pile of dead rats underneath it. People are gonna see that, they're gonna be concerned. They actually now come out with a bait box to hide that trap inside so that it contains the dead rats from that CO2.
you know, most of the bait boxes I've seen actually have only the poison food inside. And the animals enter through a small hole, and consume it. And they're so small, I've actually seen dead chipmunks, which sort of saddened me. But you know, I've also seen quite a few other dead animals. I'm constantly on patrol out in my yard and the neighbor's yard, looking, seeing, are there any dead animals around here? Because if they're there, you want to bury them and make sure that, you know, raptors cannot get to them. So it takes a lot of work and attention to the problem, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Can I mention something?
Sure, please go
There
ahead.
are virtual versions of there's phone versions of the smart boxes. We have those at some of the sanctuaries too, just in like corners and caves. They're just really small. So there's big commercial ones that actually have dumping stations where it will hit the animals into a bin. Because one of the other factors that we do acknowledge is the increased labor that can be involved when, you know, the rats, people don't like to see the rats. So when you do bait stations, they run off and people don't have to see them. They die someplace else or possibly get eaten by it. And so people like that. They like not being able to see the dead animals. And, you know, snap traps or electronic traps, there's an increased labor cost to it. So some of the commercial ones, like Somerville and Cambridge, have been doing a joint effort to try and do some testing with the big smart boxes. So they actually pull tip when they get full and dump them into a bin. Because you do need to address the labor.
The only thing that I'll add to that is that the smart boxes also connect to the pest control company that puts them out there, so they get real-time reports as when a box is. So that's,
Like Bluetooth.
yeah, so
They're
Brookline's public health director and I had a conversation recently. She's offered, you know, herself to be a resource to the Department of Health. That has got alternative rodent population management issues, so they've collaborated extensively with Modern Pest, that developed smart boxes, so she'd be able to provide more details on that.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be helpful. Perhaps only have the public forum.
After a couple ideas that the Board of Health could implement in
Sure.
town to help alleviate rat problems. So currently you have a permitting process with inspections for horses. Every year, town sends a representative out to those properties to inspect. They have to submit a pest management plan as part of being, or how they're gonna address pests, how they're gonna address manure as part of having those animals. If there was a way, respectfully, I'm against over-regulation of government, but if there was a way for people that wanna have backyard chickens, or if a complaint came into the Board of Health related to backyard chickens, they have to implement the pest management plan in order to maintain those animals in Plymouth, because again, it's not.
That's happening.
It is, okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
It wasn't necessarily that one that has chickens that still has 5 chickens.
Correct, that's definitely happening.
It is.
Yeah.
I think there was someone in the back that wanted to speak.
My question was answered during the discussion.
Okay. Anyone else?
She was raising her hand quite a lot.
So I guess it's more like a statement, but I guess it could also kind of be a question. Do you find that the overdevelopment in Plymouth is causing an increase in rodents because it's taking away the wildlife? The larger mammals, or the predators that are going after the smaller rodents are now being rehomed?
That's not the reason for the decrease in coyotes. I would say that it's probably one of the reasons we may be seeing an increase, but it's certainly not the only nor the main reason that we're seeing an increase.
I just know, like, I went to Mark Bassett the other day and there was a mother fox
Mhm.
that had babies in a den because she has nowhere else to go, because,
Mhm.
so.
I had a question too, of something that I read about New York City, maybe for the pest control people, birth control, a birth control program, which I thought was very interesting. It takes 2 years for it to work. But it's literally feeding the rats birth control so they can't have any more rat babies. Is it cost prohibitive?
So it's not necessarily cost prohibitive, but you would have to enroll that program in such a large scale. Even if you did it, like, let's say, just as an example, you required every single homeowner in the town of Plymouth to put out rat birth control.
Okay.
Well, what about Carver? What about Kingston? What about the surrounding towns that?
Well, there's an issue with the palatability of that, so I tried it in a couple of places.
Rats and
It's
mice,
just not taking.
rats and mice are very, very smart. They're not, stupid animals. They have
Yeah,
some
it was-
ability to certain things.
I knew it was a long-term plan, but I thought it was an interesting
Yeah.
way to go about it.
I could add to that, just in Brookline's experience, that's not something that they would recommend. The product itself was originally water soluble, so it would congeal, it would freeze. The company's since come out with a bay form, but based on their experience with the company, based on the previous product, they would not work with them again.
We heard.
Okay, so I have a request. So obviously, we're going to have a public forum. And in that case, I imagine many of you will come again. If you do, please try to keep in your minds that we get nowhere unless we listen and try to find common ground. I think it's very important to do that. Just this discussion today seems to indicate to me that there are ways to actually listen to opposing sides and find ways that maybe are not perfect for you or for you or for you, but would be acceptable as a common ground sort of thing, and compromise. So that's worked for the Board of Health, trying to do other things when there was really vehement opposition and fighting back and forth and exchange of really some caustic, difficult comments. We have to avoid that. And we will avoid that if at all possible, as long as we don't make a problem with our open meeting law, because everybody gets a chance to speak within the limits of our time available. So I don't know yet when the public forum will be, but when we have it, we appreciate if many, if not all of you would come again and participate in answering more questions. We'll all probably look into this in more detail, try to find out other things. And if you have an idea that you think would be acceptable, but maybe not what you would ultimately prefer was the case, we'd certainly like to hear about it. Okay? So, given that, oh, you had one more question to ask.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Karen, you seem to have quite a lot of data there. Is there anything else germane to the conversation that we ought to know about before we adjourn the conversation?
Well, I think we talked about everything that I wanted to go over. I think Brookline is very different than Plymouth. So I think we have to be I think we need to concentrate on our community and what works here, what would work here for us. But that's about it. Some people did say about the bill that was put forth in the Massachusetts legislature. We already talked about that. We talked about alternative pest management techniques, and that was important to talk about. We talked about that. We talked about the impact to companion animals. Yeah, so I think everything was gone over. I don't think a lot of the letters, Dr. Hoffman did refer to the letters. I went through the letters just to see if there was anything unique in the letters that should be brought up, and they were all the same. So I would have definitely have said, we should read this part because it's very different, but they were all pretty much the same. So, that's why we thought it wasn't quite necessary to read all 15.
Yeah. So there's one other person wants to
Sorry,
speak.
just one last question. As everyone knows, Plymouth.
Could you give your name again, please?
Oh, sorry, Samantha Pellerin. So obviously, like, Plymouth is a huge tourist town, and the summer is the prime time. Is there anything implemented to help try to like regulate the rodent population for that? Because obviously it's easy enough for homeowners to not put out bird feeders and be very mindful of our community. However, folks that come in from everywhere else, they don't respect it. So is there anything that can like?
Well, it's a very good question and a very good point. And I will let you know that I am working with administration to make sure that we work hand in hand with our DPW department, which is the Department of Public Works, to make sure that town-owned trash receptacles are emptied frequently. We will remind through our department, there are restaurants that own their own that are on public sidewalks, and sometimes we'll think they're owned by the town of Plymouth. They're not. They're actually owned by the individual restaurants, but we will definitely keep an eye on those. We inspect our food establishments sometimes 4 times a year, depending on how much of the establishment they are. So we will definitely have boots on the ground, so to speak, and eyes on the prize, to make sure that everyone's following what they need to follow.
Yeah, I would add that, it's a good idea to have eyes, lots of eyes. So if you happen to observe a business that has a huge trash bin and it's overflowing and trash is falling out of it onto the ground surrounding it, we've had a case like that. That is surely going to attract rats. There's no doubt about it. you need to report that, to the department immediately. And within a day, they will have a visit from the Department of
I
Health.
also think it's important for folks to understand too that Plymouth has 65,000 people, so you can imagine that we have a population within Plymouth that may suffer from mental illness. Part of mental illness sometimes involves hoarding. Hoarding also attracts rodents, and it's very difficult to deal with that type of situation. It's very long, it's very time consuming. So I want people to understand that in some cases, we all want a rodent problem to go away immediately. In some cases, that's not possible. And sometimes these people live in multiple unit apartment buildings, and it's impacting everyone that lives there. But there's a process that we have to go through, and I just, try to explain to people that we have to be patient in some circumstances, that it cannot be an overnight fix.
Okay, thank you, Karen. So thank you all for coming, this afternoon. We appreciate all the thoughts and ideas that you may have had and will have in the future. We won't do anything suddenly. We're a very deliberate body, and the people who are on the Board of Health are all fairly professional with really strong backgrounds in public health and science. So we will be careful, and we will try our best to find a way to solve the problem. So thank you very much. If you wish to stay, you may. Because the next.
You questioned if it was a mole, this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Before you all run away, Dr. Reed is about to make a presentation about stress. Stress awareness.
Thank you.
You'll be seeing me Gentlemen, if you, we have to get on with other businesses. We might going outside.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And the floor is yours, Dr. Reed.
We are all stressed out.
Let's talk about stress.
You can leave that there. I'll get it.
It turns out that April is Stress Awareness Month. And I thought it might be important to just talk about a couple of strategies that help with stress, because we know that stress can lead to mental health, more serious mental health issues such as depression and potentially suicide. So I just wanted to mention that was this month, and I have 8 stress busters.
I'm ready.
You have one of those squeezing balls?
Yeah. Well, actually, my first stress buster is to squeeze a fur ball, but the fur balls that I was talking about had to do with our pets.
No.
And there's been a lot of research shown that when you actually pet a pet or have a pet sit in your lap, that oxytocin, which is the happy hormone, is released. So good idea to fix your pet or somebody.
Have a pet.
And if you don't have a pet, a squeeze fur ball would be good. The next suggestion is signing off of social media. Because talking to someone face to face is much more important than always being on social media. You don't get that interaction and that energy that you get from actually being face to face. The next thing is to get your Z's. Make sure that you're sleeping, if you're sleeping well. If you're not sleeping well, you get tired and you do not handle stress as well. So try to at least get your 7 to 8 hours, and that will help you to be able to cope better. Avoid drugs and alcohol. When we use those things, we think they're going to make us happy, And they do for a period of time, but when they wear off, then you get depressed. And so these are actually depression inducing. And if you're stressed already, I hear people talk a lot about, I need a drink, I'm stressed. That can actually make it worse. So try to avoid those things as much as possible. Eat a homemade meal. I love this one. If you have somebody that can make it for you. Otherwise,
You're assuming that cooking is stressful too?
Stressful. So fast food, actually is loaded with sugar. And what happens when you get a sugar rush, then about 2 hours later, you get a sugar down. And that can cause you to feel crashing and get more depressed. Phone a friend instead of doing the texting, actually talk to someone. And while I'm mentioning phoning, we have in Massachusetts the helpline. If you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling like you're going to maybe do something harmful to yourself, you can always call that person. So that person is a friendly voice on the other end if you can't call a friend. Exchange one unhealthy habit for a healthy one. And I'm going to bring up the new smoking problem, which is sitting too much. So sitting is the new smoking. So we have couch potatoes, but we also just sit all day long at our desks and in front of our computers. And so we need to get up and move around, and that will help to decrease stress. You know, one of the ways that animals decrease stress is by running around. If any of you have pets, you know, they love to get out, especially this time of year, and run. So get out and run with your little furry friends, and then go back in and hug them.
Yeah, don't try to do both at the same time.
Depends on the furry friend.
Yeah.
And get outside is the last one, because the weather's good now. Go walk on the beach, get out in nature, take your shoes off, wiggle your feet in the sand, because all those things help to decrease the stress level. So we can put those on our website if
definitely.
if you would like. And I just want to again mention that this month is stress awareness. So if you have any friends or people in your family that you feel are stressed, you might recommend some of these things to them. And don't forget about the phone number if you're really concerned.
Yeah, I think it's through Dr. Poppin, if I may. I think our furry friends also know when we're stressed.
Oh, yeah.
Because during COVID, at the height of COVID, when things were really crazy and I was working from home, my dog sat at my feet. Like, I didn't call her in to that room. Like, every morning when I got up, she'd just come right in and stay with me. But it made such a difference. I don't think I even realized how much of a difference it made till much later, looking back at it. And I was like, I really liked having her there. Like, she must have realized that I was stressed and I needed something.
I know, I think about it because we've had the dogs for different dogs for years, but the two that we have now, we got in December 2019. And when the pandemic hit, my kids were in 7th and 9th grade, and thank goodness for those dogs. Like, thank goodness that they were there to be somebody's friend.
Now, these are great, Dr. Reed. Thanks for sharing these.
Yeah, I can vouch for the fact that cats do the same thing and did for me. during
Yes,
COVID.
that's right. Yes, absolutely.
That's her.
They do, which is
Yeah.
very soothing. So if I didn't have Kara laying next to me or on me, I had one of those rubber balls. Squeeze.
Oh, we have to use tools, our toolbox, right?
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Karen. Director's report.
Yes, okay, so last week, as I've talked about previously, was Public Health Week. Now, I know it's passed, but I think this is important to share because part of HHS, we are part of HHS, which is Health and Human Services, and there was a proclamation made at the select board meeting. And I just want to read it. It won't take too much time, but It says, whereas the town of Plymouth, in conjunction with the Plymouth Department of Health and Human Services, is honored to partner with the American Public Health Association to recognize, celebrate, and participate in National Public Health Week during the first week of April in 2024. Whereas Plymouth Health and Human Services has been formally designated as a local partner by the American Public Health Association on the National Public Health Week website. Whereas the mission of Plymouth Health and Human Services is to connect people with vital resources within the framework of a healthy, humanistic, sustainable, and resilient community whose goal is to foster a comprehensive and compassionate social health support system that promotes a culture of belonging and cohesiveness for residents and visitors alike. Whereas since 1995, when the first full week of April was declared National Public Health Week, communities across the United States have observed the time as an opportunity to recognize the contributions of public health and highlight issues that are important to improving the public's health. Whereas the 5 divisions of Plymouth Health and Human Services, including the Center for Active Living, Plymouth Public Library, Public Health, Recreation, and Veteran Services, are all grounded in the fundamental truth that health is connected by community, and we are stronger when we work in a unified manner to lift everyone's well-being. Whereas the entire Health and Human Services Department is collectively driven by the ideal that good health is shaped by many factors, and we honor with dignity the commitment to serve as the bridge to resources for those in our community. Whereas the Center for Active Living proudly serves over 15,000 elder community members each year and delivers over 36,000 Meals on Wheels annually to our seniors. Whereas last year, the Plymouth Public Library held over 700 programs, circulated over 350,000 items, and welcomed over 174,000 visitors. Whereas the Public Health Division currently serves as the lead coordinating agency for the Regional Public Health Excellence Grant, and in 2023 issued over 2,800 licenses and conducted over 1,200 inspections or investigations to ensure the health and safety of Plymouth residents and visitors. Whereas the Recreation Division has experienced a 13% increase in registrations, with more than 3,500 individuals registered for programs that promote physical and mental health within the first 3 months of the year. And whereas during the month of February alone, the Veteran Services Division fielded 1,100 phone calls with our most deserving veterans. Therefore, the Plymouth Select Board, by virtue of their authority and in recognition of critical importance of this endeavor, do hereby proclaim the first week in April as Public Health Week in Plymouth, Massachusetts. So I just thought it was important, even though it's actually passed, this was read at the Select Board meeting during Public Health Week, and I thought it was important for the board to hear because you're vital to almost, everything that was talked about here. So I just wanted to share that. As Dr. Reed talked about stress being part of April, so is Donate Life. So April is also National Donate Life Month, where doctors work to raise awareness for the growing need of donors. More than 100,000 Americans are currently in need of an organ transplant, and doctors say the waiting list is growing by the hour. They estimate that a new name is added to that list every 8 minutes. So living organ donation. You can donate a kidney, a piece of your liver, certain other organs and tissues while you are alive. About 6,500 living donation transplants take place each year. Unlike deceased donors, a living donor can decide who to donate their organ to, helping a recipient get an organ transplant faster. Most living donations happen between family members or close friends. Other people choose to donate to someone they don't know. Living donation is typically safe for the donor. Most living donors go on to live active, healthy lives and see the positive impact of their donation. And on a personal note, my sister had a kidney transplant 2 months ago. And received a living donation from a member of her husband's family.
Wow.
So it works. Benefits of living donation. As a living donor, you can choose who receives your organ. You can reduce someone's waiting time for an organ transplant. Living kidney donation can prevent or shorten the need for kidney dialysis. In my sister's case, she doesn't have to have it. Research has shown that recipients of organs from living donors have better outcome than those who receive organs from deceased donors. So then it talks about what you're able to donate, and then how you can donate blood or bone marrow more than once, and the body replaces them after you donate. So I just thought that was important to note that it's also donate a life month, so this kind of hits close to home for me. The Public Health Nurses Corner for March, we had 71 cases of flu and 4 cases of Lyme. And then also a public health office note, as Public Health Week, we had giveaways for our visitors, pads of paper, pens, some books. We put up new information on our bulletin board, and we had a blood pressure clinic for our employees. And that includes my report for today.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Any questions for anyone?
No, it's great, thank you.
No? Chairperson's report. I really just wanted to mention. We have it's just water, it's not alcohol. I want to be clear. I just wanted to mention that, there's a letter being circulated about what's going on at Holtec. And it's to support Bill S 2685. And there was a request that Board of Health and department members, either sign that individually or as a group. And certainly get the members of our congressional and state delegation to also sign on to it. And if you look at it, you'll be horrified at what goes on with those dry casks. Which will be there for eternity, most likely. So, just a request, I sent that text out to everybody using BCC, because I didn't I wanted to make sure people wouldn't start discussing it outside of the meeting. Is there any new or old business that anyone wants to bring up?
So, I'm sorry, just going back to this, did you want to talk about this, or should we look at it and come back?
Well, a bunch of groups have already signed off on it and sent it in to the Senate. Because it is a Senate bill.
Yeah.
In Boston. And I was told by, Greta Lundberg, who's the head of Boston, Greater Boston Physicians for Social Responsibility, who I've had a lot of contact with. She said we had to send it in last Friday, which was the day I was flying back from my trip. And I said, I can't possibly get Board of Health, approval to sign, have the Board of Health listed. She said, oh, that's all right. If you can get an indication from them that they support it, I can contact the Senate panel that's actually overseeing this particular bill at the moment and let them know that the Plymouth Board of Health supports it as well.
I feel bad because I haven't read it, so I don't want
Yeah,
to say
you-
anything, so if we can talk about it in a couple weeks, if that.
Yeah,
I think that would be my choice on it.
I mean, it was the way in which those things may deteriorate and develop holes because of our marine environment and what's inside of them.
Yes.
Is really troubling, and it's really troubling that they're about 300 yards from a public road and clearly visible from the road.
Yeah, I've definitely had concerns, but just with regards to this specific thing, I definitely want to be able to read through it before.
Yeah, okay. I will put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Lorenzo has his hand up.
Lorenzo?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment regarding the SCAR discussion. I think that was a great discussion. I didn't even know much about it, and it caused me to take a deeper dive. I think as unique to Plymouth and our environment, we're very eco-friendly. There's ecotourism. There's just a plethora of outdoor natural resources here in Plymouth, and some of those I think you guys touched upon it, Dr. Poffin, earlier about authority and regulatory authority as a local Board of Health. And I did some real quick research, and at the Mass General Law level, there's the Massachusetts Pesticide Control Act, 132B, and specifically Section 5A, they talk about the reduction of pesticide use in the annual report. I won't go into the details of that, but from a policy standpoint, I think we should, consider as this process moves forward with public forum, taking, my opinion is taking a lead in some of these things, and not really being followers, but leading the rest of Massachusetts around the reduction of pesticide use. That's my comment today. Thank you.
Well, I also think, Lorenzo, that prior to the public forum, we really need to consult with the town council.
Sure.
Because there is a preemption clause in that. And what we can and cannot do is restricted by the preemption clause.
Yeah, we'll do all our homework ahead of time.
We need to know that before all these people show up again.
Yep.
Okay. Any other new or old business anyone wishes to bring up? Deb, I have a question for you.
Okay.
It appears that one of our full-time Board of Health members is most likely, almost certainly going to become a member of the select board.
Premature.
Who would that be? Wait.
Well, you could guess, but it doesn't matter who it is, but obviously there will be an opening. And I was hoping that you might, if I give you a little push, decide that since you already know what we do and how we do it, that you would ask the select board to take that opening for the permanent, for not the permanent, but the full-time Board of Health member. So give it some thought. please.
Okay, all right, and then there would still be need for an alternate, right?
Then we'd have to, well, according to what I think David sent me, the procedure for filling a vacancy is that the Board of Health must notify the select board within a month of the vacancy occurring, that the vacancy exists, and then supposedly the select board is supposed to appoint someone to fill the vacancy within a week. Excuse me for being skeptical, but it probably will take more than a week just to recruit other people unless members of the Board of Health know somebody who's just itching to join us. In which case, let them know.
If I may, Barry.
Sure.
From a logistical standpoint, and assuming that the election proceeds as our esteemed chair has indicated it may, there will be a reappointment, there'll be an appointment process that takes place in June for any expired terms. And so there could be an appointment process that includes vacant and yet to expire terms, including both the alternate and the potential for a full member to be open. So we should just communicate with them after the election to make sure that the select board knows exactly who stands where.
And there's two other members of the Board of Health whose appointments expire this June.
I know.
And I'm one of them.
Oh.
The other one, is it me?
I think it's you.
What?
I believe it's someone named Amy.
I think so, yeah.
If you look at the Board of Health on the department's website,
Oh, yeah, that's me.
that's you.
So Dr. Puffin, does that mean that you can't run again? You've served your terms?
Oh, no, I've already served 2 3-year terms. I can keep doing it as long as the select board appoints me and my dear spouse is willing to let me.
Okay, good. Glad to hear.
So, it's a good group. I want to keep it together as much as I possibly can. Because we're productive, efficient, and we're very knowledgeable. And I hate to see it sort of slowly drain away. There are other people, I'm sure, in the town that might be interested, but it remains to be seen.
Okay.
Okay?
Good.
So that was new and old business. At this point, we can probably adjourn. So does anybody wish to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Amy makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
David seconds the motion. Is there discussion? Of course not.
I guess not up this.
I'll call the roll. Lorenzo, yes or no?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Dr. Reed?
Yes.
Myself, yes. The meeting is now officially adjourned. For those who joined us a little late, I wanted